Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'll be showing us how to draft a mermaid skirt. If this is something you're interested in learning, stick with me to the end of the video. The first thing I'm going to do is to mark my vertical measurement on the pattern paper. So that's my hip length, which is 8 inches, and then my knee length, which is 23 inches, and then the full length. So the full length without any addition is 43 inches. So I'll mark that on my pattern paper. And then I'll use a ruler to draw horizontal lines across those points like so. Apologies, my lens will be blurry, but it gets clearer as the video goes on. Next, I'm going to mark my biggest circumference, which is my hip measurement divided by 4. My round hip measurement is 40, divided by 4, that's 10. So I'd mark 10 across the paper from the waist measurement to the full length. And then I would use a ruler to draw a straight line across. Now I'll just go ahead and label my lines. So my hip line, my knee length. The next thing I'm going to do is to go up the knee length by 3 inches. So that's where we begin to flay out for the mermaid skirt. We go up by 3 inches to enable ease to walk. So if you do this at the knee, it will limit movement. So we go up the knee length by 3 inches. Next, I'll start to apply my measurements. My round waist measurement is 26 divided by 4, that's 6.5. So I'll mark 6.5 and then connect it to the hip line. Don't forget, I used my exact hip measurement to draft the pattern. So I'm just going to connect my waist measurement to my hip measurement. From the hip, I would measure 2 inches down. This is just to help me with my hip shape so that I don't have any sharp corners. So at the measured 3 inches above the knee length, I'm going to subtract 10 inches from my round hip measurement. 10 inches divided by 4 is 2.5. So I'll just be subtracting 2.5 inches around the new knee length. This measurement we take out from the knee length ranges from 4 to 10 inches depending on who you're sewing for and what you're comfortable with. So if I'm sewing for an older client that wants to be really comfortable, I'll do 4 inches. But if I'm sewing for a really stylish person that is okay with the discomfort, I would go 10 inches. So if I'm sewing for someone that wants to be stylish but still wants to be a bit comfortable, I'll do -6 inches. So this will depend on who you're sewing for. This is what a -6 inches dress looks like. Next, I'm going to connect a straight line from the 2 inches I marked below the hip length to the 2.5 inches I marked at the new knee length. And then I'll use a slight curve to connect the hip length to the 2 inches below to get my shape. Next, I'm going to draft the flay. So for the flay, I'm going to be adding 10 inches to the measurement. So my flay is going to be 10 inches extra plus the hip length. If you're going to use this measurement for your skirt as well, when you're drafting, especially if you're drafting directly on fabric, you're going to be needing the hip measurement divided by 4 plus 10 inches to draft the front pattern, and you're cutting it on fold. For this width, it could go from +5 to +15, but I try to limit that +10 because once you go a bit too wide, it creates tension at the knee. So you can experiment, like if you have fabric with +15 plus, to see how it looks and if you like the way it looks. But I've experimented with the different sizes and I'm okay with +10. So I'm marking my +10 across the length of the paper. Now I'm just going to remark my lines because I realized my lines were a little bit too faint and it wasn't being obvious. Hopefully my verbal instructions have been clear enough for you to follow the tutorial. Please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to drop in the comment section and I will come back to answer your questions as best as I can. Now I'm just going to be moving my pattern paper a bit up so we can see what I'm doing at the bottom of the paper. The first thing I'm going to do is to add to the length of the skirt. So I'm going to be adding 15 inches. So this measurement here is dependent on you, it's dependent on the client's measurement. So it depends on how long you want it to be. If it's for a wedding dress, you need to make it like really long. Or if it's like a regular occasion dress, just make it longer than the heels measurement so that it covers the shoe and it's not hanging. All this to say, ensure the client is comfortable with the length before you go ahead with how long you're going to add to the mermaid skirt. So I'll connect my line across for the new length and then connect it to the vertical lines. Before I go ahead to flay out, at my new knee length, I'm going to go up by half an inch and then go down by half an inch. This is just to help to shape it better so that I don't have any sharp corners. So if you have an extremely sharp corner, it's going to create tension at the knee. At the outer edge of the flay, I went up by 1.5 inch. So the camera isn't in frame, so it's not showing what I did, but I'll be connecting from the 1.5 inch I went up by at the bottom to the half inch I went down by at the new knee length. I hope this is understandable. Just watch what I'm doing and hopefully you'll be able to get it. Otherwise, drop a question in the comments. Next, I'm going to connect my 1.5 inch I went above at the bottom to the full length of the flay with a curved ruler. If you don't have a curved ruler, you can use your free hand to do this. Just ensure that it tapers and meets the full length. And next, I'm going to connect the half inch I measured at above the new knee length and the half inch below the new knee length, and then I'm going to connect it with a slight curve. At the waistline, in the absence of that, I'm going to go down by 1 inch and mark that, and then at the side, I'm going to go in by 1.5 inch. So I'll connect my 1 inch drop to that 1.5 inch mark with a curved ruler. Now I'll go ahead and cut out my pattern and then I'll start working on my back pattern. For the back pattern, I've replicated my vertical lines, my hip length, my knee length, the 3 inches above the knee length, and the full length. But I've also added the zip allowance because I'm going to have the zip at the back. So my zip allowance is 1.5 inches from the center back line. So from the waist, I would apply my waist measurement. So my waist measurement is 6.5, just as I had for the front pattern, but I'll be applying that measurement from the center front, not from the zip allowance line. And then for the 3 inches above the knee, I'll measure 2.5, just as I did for the front pattern. So next, I'll go 2 inches below the hip line. So I'm basically just replicating the shape I had for the front pattern. The only difference between what I did then and what I have on this paper is the zip allowance, but all my measurements are starting from the original line, not from the zip allowance line. So I'll just draft my curve from the waist to the hip, from the 2 inches below the hip to the knee length. Because when I say knee length, I mean the 3 inches above the original knee length. The actual knee length, we don't use it for anything but just for a reference point to get that 3 inches above the knee length. The next thing I'm going to do is to get the butt contour at the center back. So at the zip allowance, the first thing I'm going to do is to mark 1 inch in from the zip allowance. So don't forget my zip allowance was 1.5 inches. And then at the hip length, I'm going to go up by 2 inches and go down by 2 inches. And then at the new knee length, I'm going to go in by 1 inch. So I'll connect these marks together to get my butt contour. So one more measurement you need to get the perfect shape. If you measure from the back of the client, from the waist to just under the butt, like follow the curve. But please don't be touching clients anyhow, making them feel uncomfortable. Just be what's the word now, professional with the way you take your measurement. So my measurement was 14 inches. So at that 14 inches, I would mark 1 inch in. If you don't have this waist to under butt measurement, you can just go ahead and connect the waist to the 2 inches above the hip line to the 2 inches below the hip line to the knee length. It will still give you a nice curve. But if you have this under butt measurement, it gives a more perfect curve than just doing it all the way to the knee. So I'll go ahead and draw my line now. So I'll connect from the 2 inches below the hip line to the under butt length. And then from that under butt length, I'll connect to the knee line with a straight line. So this is what the shape looks like. Next, I will transfer the 1 inch I took at the knee and at the waist to the other side. So I'm just replacing the measurement I have subtracted to get the correct measurement. So I'll do 1 inch at the knee and 1 inch at the waist. So I don't bother replicating the same 1 inch at the under butt at the other side, because by the time I draw my curve, it will account for the 1 inch I've taken. So I'll connect the lines, and this is my actual line, not the line with blue marker. The line with the green marker is my actual line. Please note that this back pattern was drafted at the middle of the pattern paper. So I made allowance at the sides for the flare of the mermaid skirt and also at the center back for the train. If you don't want yours to have the cut together train, then you can just go ahead and leave enough allowance for the side flare. Now I'll just go ahead and connect the new knee length to the full length, just as I did for the front pattern. Now for the cut together train, I would measure from my zip allowance to how much I want to add. So I decided to add 18 inches. You can decide to make it as wide as you want it. So for more effect, you can make it like bigger. So I decided to go with 18 inches. So I'll mark that 18 inches from the top to the full length. Now to the bottom, I'm going to add 15 inches to my full length. So the back is going to be 15 inches longer than the front. Once again, this additional measurement is at your discretion, so you can decide to make it as long as you want it to be. I'd measure the 15 inches extra from the full length and mark it, and then mark it across the paper. Next, I'm going to move to the side back, and then I'm going to taper with a curve from that point all the way to the full length of the back. So you can either use a freehand or a curved ruler. So my curved wasn't giving me a very nice perfect curve, so I decided to use my freehand to draw mine. Next, I'm going to move to the center back. If you notice, I keep moving this pattern paper all over the place. It's because it's a really big pattern. I'm going to be connecting from my 3 inches above the knee length, that's my new knee length, all the way to the full length of the back. So I'll just use a straight ruler and connect it. Also, that point I didn't connect properly, I will correct it. I'll just draw from that point all the way to the end. Once I'm done adjusting all my lines, I'll go ahead and cut out the pattern. If you're interested in seeing how I couple the skirts, please drop it in the comments and I'll be able to create a video showing you how I sew this pattern. If you're drafting directly on fabric, I use 6 yards of a 45-inch wide fabric to cut out this pattern just to skirt. So ensure you have sufficient fabric if you're going to be using these exact patterns, or if you're altering your measurements, then you may need less or you may need more depending on what you're doing and the size you're sewing for. I hope this video has been helpful, detailed and informative, and I also hope it's been easy to follow. If you have any questions, please drop in the comment section. I'm happy to provide any details that you require. Please don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful. This is just so the YouTube algorithm can suggest my videos to other people that need content like this. And also don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.